years, hundreds of Jehovah's Witnesses have been subjected to raids, arrests, and prosecution in Russia. Law enforcement authorities across Russia have dramatically escalated the nationwide persecution of Jehovah's Witnesses. Jehovah's Witnesses worshippers are behind bars for peacefully practicing their faith. With more details on this, I'm now joined by Mr. Sheldon Greenwood, spokesperson for Jehovah's Witnesses in Namibia. Good morning, sir, and welcome to Good Morning Namibia.
Good morning, Denver. Thank you for having us.
How are you doing on this gift of a Thursday morning?
Today I'm doing very well. Sun rose, so we're all happy.
Very well. Please talk to us about how this persecution and prosecution of Jehovah's Witnesses started in Russia.
So in 2016, the Russian Federation, they amended an act that has to do with extremism. Following that, a year later, on the 20th of April, they then banned Jehovah's Witnesses. So they banned the legal entities, they confiscated properties, and then they started imprisoning Jehovah's Witnesses. So the ban came in April 2020, then in May 2017, the first Jehovah's Witnesses received a prison sentence of 6 years. Now, the man, his name is Dennis Christensen, is a peace-loving individual, and they imprisoned him under the guise that he is an extremist. Sure.
What brought this witch hunt, one is tempted to say, about?
Well, you know, it's the law that they are misapplying. And when you talk to specialists, they will tell you that this is a misapplication. For example, the European Human Rights Court, they've recently issued 2 judgments against Russia. That took place on 28th of February 2022. Now, the surprising thing about the banning of Jehovah's Witnesses and the subsequent imprisoning of individual Jehovah's Witnesses is that on the 28th of October 2021, they amended the act further. And in this amendment, what they said is that an individual who practices worships, whether he does it as an individual or whether he does it collectively with other people, they will not be prosecuted for participating in activities of a banned organization. So technically speaking, what that means is that even though Jehovah's Witnesses are banned as an organization, they are not supposed to be prosecuted because they amended the law. And so we thought about this. Why is this taking place? And basically, Denver, when we think about the life of Jesus, the way he died as a criminal. He died a painful death. You think of the apostles after him, the same thing. Many of them were put to death. Then you look at the first century Christians. If you look at the year 64, Emperor Nero, he killed some of these Christians. He burnt alive. And so we see that persecution of Christians, of people who want to follow Jesus, is not a new thing. So essentially, we would expect that this persecution would take place. Now, even though it takes place, even though we expect it, it's not a nice thing to experience.
Of course not. No, if one has regard to the context that you shared with us, particularly the biblical context and the history in the background, these incidents that you mentioned, would you regard them as isolated incidents, or do you think there's something bigger at play here?
No, they're not isolated incidents. In fact, thinking about Russia, in the early 50s, one of the things that they did is they exiled many Jehovah's Witnesses to Siberia. So they would basically raid your home, give you an hour to pack, and then you were put on a train and you were sent to Siberia. And just to show you how irrational this was, in some of the exile documents, there was one document of a 6-month-old baby that was also exiled, and the reason was being an enemy of the state. So that's Russia. That's when it was the USSR. That persecution continued, and then in 1991, Jehovah's Witnesses got their legal recognition back. And so the persecution abated. 2010, it started again. But Russia's not the only country. United States persecuted Jehovah's Witnesses in the early 1900s. Canada, the 1930s to 1940s. Malawi, not so far away from us, also banned Jehovah's Witnesses. Greece banned Jehovah's Witnesses for over 40 years. During that ban, there were 20,000 arrests. Then Germany, very, very interesting, Germany banned Jehovah's Witnesses in 1933. Then in 1936, the Gestapo went on an all-out attack against Jehovah's Witnesses. In fact, Hitler said his goal is to expunge, to exterminate this group of Jehovah's Witnesses.
That's tragic. As we're wrapping up our conversation, despite the human rights pronouncements, despite amended laws, the persecution persists. What recourse is available, and what is it that Jehovah's Witnesses across the globe are doing to assist those, especially in Russia at the moment?
That's a good question. So when we think of the Apostle Paul when he was persecuted, one of the things that he said, or one of the things that he did, remember he said, I appeal to Caesar. So he used the law. Jehovah's Witnesses are peace-loving, so we're not going to take up arms and fight back. We're going to use those mechanisms, and we have used the mechanisms. So at the moment, with the European Human Rights Court, there are 64 applications. Then we have an organization like the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. Together with the European Union, they have condemned what Russia has been doing against Jehovah's Witnesses. So we continue to use those avenues, just to raise the alarm. But something else, one expert from Amnesty International encouraged others besides Jehovah's Witnesses to raise the alarm. So with your local politician, in parliament, and also very interesting with the media. So we really commend, NBC for...
It's ours.
Yeah, so we commend NBC for doing that, having this interview and raising the alarm in that way.
Thank you for your time, sir, and we wish that the matter will be resolved sooner rather than later.
Thank you very much.
That was Mr. Sheldon Greenwood, spokesperson for the Jehovah's Witnesses in Namibia, talking to us about the trauma through the persecution of Jehovah's Witnesses in Russia. We will be right back after a brief break.